In this land, women are just a tool to better a man's life. They are our inheritance. So know your place. Do not talk when men are talking. All you must do is kneel down and bow your head.
In the land of Adoba, only men were counted as people. Women were not. A man was a name that would carry through his sons into the generations after him. A woman was the hands that fed him and the back that carried his water. A family with sons was a family. A family of only daughters was nothing. And the father who raised them was already counted lesser at the council, a man whose name would die with him. The women of Adoba woke before sunrise. They walked 4 miles to the river before they ate. They farmed in the heat of the day, cooked the evening meal, knelt to serve it, and cleaned everything after. Not one man had ever said thank you. Not one had ever thought to. But when the war came, that was supposed to destroy the village, it was not the spears of the men that stopped it. It was the silence of the women, the patience of the women, the invisible, unstoppable power of people who had been told their whole lives that they were nothing. This is the story of the women of Adoba. And what they did without making a single sound changed everything. Long, long time ago, in the village of Adoba, built from red mud between 2 red hills, a woman was not a person in the way a man was a person. She existed to serve, to carry, to kneel, and to be silent. And here is what would break your heart. It was not only the women themselves that the village called worthless. It was the man who fathered them. If a man in Adoba had only female children, if he sat at Obadara's council without a single male child to carry his name, that man was already counted lesser.
I want to add my own suggestions.
No. A man that has no male child is not allowed to speak in a council. You know that.
No matter how wise he was, no matter how hard his hands had worked the soil, a female child was raised in your compound and then given away to build another man's future. A male child was the one who stayed. This was the village Amora woke up in every morning of her life. She was 28 years old. Her arms were strong from years of carrying water and yams and firewood, and her face had the steady, awake quality of women who had never been allowed to be still. Behind her eyes, a quiet intelligence kept itself banked low, the way a careful cooking fire stays warm through the night, without flaring up to draw the wind. Her mother had been born in the village of Kavara. Adoba had never fully forgiven her for that, and Amora had grown up feeling it the way a person feels weather. Not always spoken, but always there. When she said something useful, it was sometimes acknowledged and sometimes quietly attributed to the foreign blood in her. When something went wrong, it was occasionally connected, in low voices, to the same. What her mother had given her at the cooking fire each evening, the village did not see. Stories. Her mother told stories the way a careful farmer plants seeds, with attention, with patience.
Their greatest weapon is also the thing that can destroy them,
her mother said. One evening when Amora was 19, the firelight catching the deep lines around her mother's eyes, her hands moving slowly over the cassava she was peeling.
Every warrior in their army moves as one body, one sprint, one direction, one force hitting you before you have finished assembling. No village has ever stopped it, not one.
Then how do you stop something that has never been stopped?
Amora asked, leaning forward on her low stool, her own hands going still in her lap.
You do not stop it with a wall. You stop it before it starts. Their legs are everything. Without the leg, the formation is nothing. Without the formation, they are just men.
And how would a person reach their legs before the battle?
Her mother set the cassava down. She looked at Amora for a long, quiet moment across the firelight, her face very still.
Their water,
She said quietly, her voice dropping the way voices drop when they are giving something important.
the northern spring. Every warrior drinks from it before every engagement. And their general will accept no other source on a battle morning. He believes the water carries the strength of his ancestors. It is the one superstition he has never questioned, not once in his life.
Why are you telling me this?
Her mother's eyes did not leave hers.
Because I do not know when you will need it. But I know that you will.
Amora carried that conversation inside her without yet knowing what it was for. She was 19 years old, sitting at a cooking fire, listening to her mother. She stored the knowledge in the part of the mind where things wait until they are needed. Her mother had given her many things at that fire. The names of every herb that grew between the village and the river, and what each one did, and when to use it. How to count quietly in her head when the men around her were arguing about numbers and she had not been asked to speak. How to listen to what was not said as carefully as to what was. The small practical knowledges that a woman in Adoba would need, and that no one in any official capacity would ever think to teach her.
Everything I am telling you, Amora,
Her mother said one night, her hands folded around a small cup of palm wine, her eyes on the fire.
keep it, not in words. Keep it the way you keep a coal buried under ash. Quiet, protected, waiting. One day someone is going to need a fire and you are going to be the only one who has one.
I will remember.
Amora said softly, her own hands folded in her lap.
I know you will. That is why I am telling you.
Amora had married Darren when she was 22. In the beginning, something real had lived between them. She could still find the memory of it if she looked carefully through the layers of what the marriage had become. She found Darren one evening at the river when he was 25 and she was 23, and they had been married a year. He was sitting on the smooth, flat stone where the women rested their pots. He had walked the 2 miles down the path to bring her something she had forgotten at home. The light was the kind of red-gold light that came in the hour before sunset, and he sat with his arms loose around his knees and watched her wash her hands in the river.
You know things you should not know, Amora.
He said quietly, the corner of his mouth lifting, his eyes warm on her face.
You see things other people miss completely. How does one woman carry so much inside her head?
She laughed, her hands still in the water, her wrapper folded up above her knees.
The same way I carry everything else.
She said softly, glancing back at him over her shoulder.
Without anyone noticing.
I notice.
She had carried that I notice with her for the next 6 years. Adoba was patient and thorough in the way it shaped its men. It did not announce what it was building. It simply maintained itself. The same expectations every day, the same rewards for certain behaviors, and the same penalties for others. The same older men telling younger men what respect looked like in this place. 6 years of marriage had done their work on Darren. The man who had once watched her with quiet warmth had become a man whose first instinct, when she opened her mouth in public, was to look at the men around him to see if his face had been embarrassed. She had learned to manage herself before he had to. The fire behind her eyes burned low and quiet now. It did not flare. Bakono was Deron's closest friend, and he lived in the compound that shared a wall with theirs. He was not a cruel man. He was simply an ordinary man of Adoba, and in Adoba, that meant something specific. He had absorbed everything the village taught about men and women so completely that it lived in him now, not as belief, but as breath. He did not think about how he treated his wife Sela any more than he thought about how he walked. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Amora saw it happen. She was on the path home from the farm, a bundle of cocoyam on her head, when Sela came around the bend ahead of her. Sela was younger than Amora by maybe 2 years. She was carrying a bundle of firewood on her head and a clay pot of water on her hip, both at the same time, because there were not enough hours in any day in Adoba to make separate trips for separate things. Her face wore the particular tiredness of a woman who had stopped counting hours. Her foot caught the root that ran across the path, the same root that had been sitting in that same spot for years. The pot tipped. Water spilled dark into the red dust, saved the pot from shattering by the same motion, and stood back up. All of it in 3 or 4 seconds. She did not make a sound. Across the path, in the shade outside his hut, Bakono rose from his chair. He had been sitting in that chair since morning. He walked toward his wife without hurrying, his bare feet quiet in the red dust, his hands hanging loose at his sides. He stopped a few feet from her. He looked down at the cracked pot. He looked at the wet stain of spilled water darkening the dust.
You cannot even walk a straight path without destroying something.
He said flatly, his voice low and unraised, his head tilting slightly as he studied her face.
What exactly are you useful for, Sela?
Sela kept her eyes on the ground. The firewood pressed against her scalp. The cracked pot was still in her hands.
You cannot farm without losing half of it to laziness.
Bakono continued, his voice still soft, his hands still loose, his eyes never leaving her.
You cannot carry water from a river 2 miles away without wasting it as if it fell from the sky for free. You sit in my house, you eat my food, you breathe my air, and this cracked pot in the dust is everything I have to show for it.
Sela did not lift her eyes. She did not answer. She adjusted the firewood with one slow hand, picked her way past her husband, and walked through the doorway of their hut without changing her expression once. Bakono watched her go. Then he turned, walked back to his chair, sat down and picked up his afternoon, as though nothing had interrupted it. Amora stood on the path with the cocoyam on her head. She had not meant to stop. Her feet had stopped without asking her. She watched the whole thing from beginning to end. When Bakono had returned to his chair, she made her feet move again. She walked the rest of the way home. She set the cocoyam down in her kitchen. She lit the cooking fire. She prepared Deron's evening meal the way she had prepared it every evening for 6 years. And when he came in from under the iroko tree, she knelt at his feet and placed the bowl in front of him with both hands, and she went back to the kitchen to wait for what remained. That was a Tuesday in Adoba. The harvest celebration came 2 weeks later, and Amora woke that morning with a lightness she could not fully explain. She lay on her sleeping mat in the grey pre-dawn and felt something warm sitting in her chest where the familiar weight usually lived. The light that came through the cracks in the mud walls was the particular golden harmattan light. She dressed carefully in her best wrapper. She worked shea butter into her skin slowly, the way her mother had taught her. She looked at her reflection in the small piece of polished metal on the wall beside her doorway. For one unguarded moment, when the armor was down, she let herself feel beautiful, present, like a woman who had a rightful place somewhere joyful. She walked to the celebration ground with Darren, and the moment she arrived, she felt it. The warmth of being inside something instead of watching from outside. The drums were already going. The smell of palm oil rose from the cooking fires. People were dressed in their good wrappers. The men gathered to talk before the eating, as they always did. Today, they were arguing about the trading route to the neighbouring market.
The Eastern Road is the fastest in dry season.
Ikenna said, leaning forward on his low stool, his palm wine cup in his hand.
That is the one I have always used. The Eastern Road floods. 2 years ago, I lost half a load of yam on that road. The ground holds nothing after rain. Then we go before the rains.
Ikenna shot back, his jaw lifting.
And if the rains come early,
A third man asked, his eyebrows raised.
as they did last season, you cannot build a trading route around a hope. The northern path adds half a day's walking. Nobody wants that either.
Amora knew the answer. She walked those routes every week, carrying loads that would break most of the men currently arguing. She knew which path flooded after rain, because her ankles had been in that flood. She knew which path held firm in every season, because her feet had tested it in every season. She spoke. One sentence, clear and useful, and completely correct.
The middle path holds in every season.
She said steadily, her hands folded in front of her wrapper.
It runs higher than the Eastern Road, so it does not flood. It is not as long as the northern path. I have walked it in rain and dry, both. The ground is firm the whole way through.
The silence that followed lasted 2 seconds. Then Darren's voice came across the gathering, smooth, almost amused. The voice of a man making a gentle point that he expected everyone around him would find obvious.
This woman talks like someone who has forgotten that a hen does not crow in the presence of a cock.
The laughter was immediate. It rolled through the circle like a wave, not one or two men, the whole group at once. Easy, unself-conscious. The laughter of people who had heard something they found genuinely funny. They were not laughing to wound her. They laughed because the image had landed cleanly, and because the comedy of a woman speaking in a man's gathering felt natural and harmless to every person laughing. The laughter landed on Amora's skin like something with weight. She felt her face arrange itself into a smile before she had decided to smile. She picked up her clay pot from the ground beside her. She walked to the cooking area at the edge of the celebration, sat down on a low stool with her back to the drums and the laughter. Adina came and crouched beside her. Adina was the wife of Jaro, the king's chief war general. She had survived 20 years in Adoba by becoming so quiet that she had almost disappeared into the walls of her own home. Her face had stopped having weather on it years ago. She moved through the village like a shadow that had learned the right angles. She put her hand briefly on Amora's arm, her grip tight enough to feel.
Why do you keep doing this to yourself, Amora?
She whispered urgently, her voice pulled tight, her eyes flicking once to where the men still sat.
Do you enjoy it?
Amora did not look up from the red dirt.
Learn to be quiet. Learn to be quiet before your husband decides that quiet is not enough.
Then she stood and went back to the cooking fire before Amora could answer. Amora sat with those words settling into her skin, alongside the laughter still rising from the men. That evening, in their hut, Darren spoke to her in the voice he reserved for when he wanted something to reach all the way inside. He sat in his carved wooden chair near the doorway. The lamp on the small table cast yellow shadows on the mud wall. Amora was at the far end of the hut, putting away the day's clothes, her back half turned to him.
I have never met a woman so full of thoughts that nobody asked for,
he said quietly, his voice carrying easily across the small room, his fingers tapping slowly on the carved arm of the chair. She did not stop folding the wrapper in her hands.
You think that because your mother filled your head with that Kavara nonsense at the cooking fire, you understand things men have spent their whole lives learning?
He paused. The silence in the hut was thick with the smell of the cooking fire still warm in the kitchen behind her.
Every time you open your mouth in front of people, I want to disappear into the ground from the sheer embarrassment of being married to a woman who does not know her place.
He paused again. Then he delivered the line he had been moving toward since the moment he had begun.
The day I married you, Amora, I was told I was getting a wife,
he said gently, his voice almost tender now.
What I got was a woman who thinks she is something else.
She placed the folded wrapper carefully on top of the others. Her hands did not tremble. She did not turn.
I do not know what you think you are, Amora, but this village knows exactly what you are. And so do I.
He said the last part with the calm of a man who had decided. The tenderness was the most violent thing in the room. Amora continued moving around the hut with steady hands. She lit a second lamp. She checked the water gourd. She set out the cloth Darren would use to wipe his face in the morning. She gave him nothing on her face. When she came outside later to wash the cooking pots in the dark, Mama Ora was sitting against the outer mud wall of the next compound, her wrapper pulled around her shoulders, her hands folded in her lap. 80 years old, the oldest living woman in Adoba. She had watched this village from that same wall for longer than anyone currently alive could remember. She watched Amora wash the pots in silence for a long moment. Then, without preamble, the way very old people say things, she spoke.
The most dangerous person in any village is the one everyone has decided does not matter.
Amora stopped what she was doing. The clay pot in her hands stilled. She turned. Mama Ora was already looking at something else. The sky, the Iroko tree, something past both of them. Amora went back to washing the pots, but she carried those words into the hut with her that night. She lay down with them. 3 weeks before everything broke open, Amora went to the river at midday. It was an unusual hour. Her regular river trip happened before sunrise, as it did for every woman in Adobe. But she needed water again, and midday was the only time she could get away, her empty pot on her head, her wrapper sticking to her back. She knelt at the water's edge and began to fill her pot. Then she lifted her eyes across the slow brown water, and she saw them. 2 men on the far bank, moving through the tree line. She knew every face in Adobe. These were not those faces, and these were not men passing through on their way somewhere else. They moved with the slow, deliberate care of people who were studying a thing. Their attention kept going to specific spots in a specific sequence. The hill above the village's main entrance path. The gaps in the tree line on the village side that would give a clear line of approach. She watched one of them press his palm flat against the bark of a tree and hold it there for several seconds. She watched the other shade his eyes with one hand and study the rise of the red hill above the entrance, his head tilting slightly as he calculated something. She understood immediately what she was seeing. Her mother's stories had given her the language to read it. Scouts. She filled her pot the rest of the way with hands that did not tremble, because hands that trembled at a riverbank would tell two men on the far side that they had been seen. She lifted the pot to her head. She walked the red dust path home, and her heart moved faster than her feet. She found Darren under the Iroko tree. He was sitting on his usual route with Bakono beside him, Ikenna across from them, and a man named Okonkwo on his left. They were drinking the early afternoon palm wine the women had brought out an hour before. Amora walked up to the tree with her pot still on her head. She set it down at her feet. She did not greet anyone. She did not lower her eyes.
There were two men at the far bank of the river this afternoon,
she said clearly, her voice steady, her hands at her sides.
I do not know their faces. They were not passing through. They were studying the hill above the entrance path. One of them pressed his palm against a tree and held it there. They were marking the approach routes into this village. The name Kavara has been in every market conversation for months. They have already taken 2 villages. What I saw today was scouts. I know what scouts look like because my mother told me.
4 men looked up at her. The silence under the Iroko tree, she had heard this silence before. It was the silence that came before a man told a woman to go inside. She had heard it many times.
Women at the river see all kinds of things,
Bakono said with a small laugh, shifting on the route, his eyes still on his palm wine cup. He did not look at her.
Travelers pass that bank every week,
Ikenna added, lifting his cup, his voice almost bored.
Travelers do not press their palms against trees and study hillsides for an hour,
Amora replied, her chin lifted, her voice still steady. Darren rose from his seat slowly. He stood with the deliberate, controlled movement of a man demonstrating to the men around him that he was calm, that what he was about to do was measured. His face still composed, his eyes locked on hers.
Go inside, Amora.
I am telling you what I saw with my own eyes at the river this afternoon,
she said, her voice still level, her hands at her sides.
I watched them. I know what the movement means. Those men were marking the entrance paths to this village.
The slap was not loud. It was the flat of his palm against the side of her face, and the world tilted briefly to the left, and a ringing started somewhere deep in her ear and spread. She pressed her palm to her cheek. She felt the burning spread outward from the center in slow rings.
Women see ghosts. Women see snakes and enemies in every tree. Go back inside before you embarrass me further.
She held his gaze for one breath. Then she turned. She walked away from the Iroko tree without speaking, and without looking back at the 4 men. Halfway down the path to her hut, she stopped. She looked at the ground at her feet. She spoke very quietly, only to herself.
I will remember this,
she whispered. Her hand still pressed against her burning cheek, she walked the rest of the way home. She sat down on the kitchen floor with both palms flat against the cool red dirt beneath her. She breathed. The burning in her cheek spread and faded and spread again. She knew she was right. She knew it the way a person knows things that live in the body rather than just the head. And knowing and being believed were 2 different countries in Adoba, and she had never been granted passage to the second one. 3 weeks later, a messenger arrived at the entrance of Adoba, carrying a message burned into a flat piece of bark. The message was from Kavara. Kavara had consumed 3 neighboring villages in 3 seasons, each time offering the same choice: each time leaving nothing standing. The message to Adobe gave them one full moon cycle to surrender and accept the rule of the Kavara king, or face what the other 3 villages had faced. The scouts Amora had seen at the river had completed their work weeks ago. Every entrance, every weakness, every water crossing, every path had been mapped and delivered to the Kavara war general, who had been building his plan ever since. Darren did not look at Amora when the news spread through the village. He did not say her name, he did not acknowledge in any form what she had told him at the Iroko tree 3 weeks before, what she had been struck across the face for saying, what had turned out to be exactly what she had said it was. She was not waiting for him to, she was already thinking. If you are eager to know how this story unfolds, drop continue in the comments. You know how we do it. Share this video, hit that like button, and help us make this one go viral. Let the world know we are back, and we are fully back to stay. To every single one of you who never left, we see you. We appreciate you. And we are just getting started. Stay with us. The best is coming. Don't miss it.
Gubaya kaenda moyo wangu weep inside.